Hey, thank you for that. Um, so, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dela Morris, and I am the president of the Vallejo Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. My comments will be brief because we are here to listen to the great words coming from our guest author, Victoria Christopher Murray. This is Women History Month, so it's an awesome opportunity for us to listen to the words of this prolific author and to ask necessary questions. To all of our guests, thank you for coming. To the members of Vallejo Alumni Chapter, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing from this award-winning author. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Valerie Roberts-Gray. Thank you all for coming.
And thank you again. I'll just briefly go over the day's agenda. It's very simple. We will hear a little bit about our Zoom etiquette from Dr. Erica Spencer Brown, who chairs our technology committee. And hopefully I can get through the day today without too many breakups from my Wi-Fi. Basically, I will open it up with an introduction of our author, and then we'll start a conversation, an opening conversation with the author. And then we have a panel of 6 from our Vallejo Book Club who have prepared questions, and they will go through the questions, and time permitting, we can then open it up for others who may also have comments to share. So with that said, let me turn it over to Erica at this point in time.
Good afternoon, Soars. Again, Soar Gray said, I'm Erica Spencer Brown. I'm the VAC Tech Chair. And a few of the things that we want to remember during our meeting this afternoon is for questions, answers, or comments, we ask that you use the reactions button to raise your hand and wait to be called on from one of the tech team members, myself and or Rhonda Smith. And if you are having any kind of technical troubles or difficulties, you can send us a chat message directly and we'll try to help you rectify that issue. Other than that, I am so excited to get started with this discussion.
Thank you, Erica. And now let me take a moment just to introduce Victoria Christopher Murray. She is a New York Times best-selling author with more than 1 million books. Listen to that, 1 million books in print. She is considered one of the country's top African-American contemporary authors. Victoria has received numerous awards, including the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work, the Golden Pen Award for Best Inspirational Fiction, the Phyllis Wheatley Trailblazer Award as a pioneer in African-American fiction, and nine different African-American literary awards. She is a native of Queens, who earned a BA in Communication Disorders from Hampton University and an MBA from New York University. She spent 10 years in corporate America before launching her entrepreneurial venture as a financial service agency, with a financial service agency where she managed the top division for 9 consecutive years. In 1997, Victoria self-published her first novel, Temptation, and 7 more books before landing a contract with Time Warner in 2000, where she's trailblazed more than 30 books, co-wrote with other authors, and ghost wrote with top talent across the country. And of course, we're proud to say that she is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. It is indeed a pleasure to have you with us today, Victoria, and I'll begin with a couple of opening questions and then we can transition to our panel. As I may have mentioned as you came on the line, you have really been a friend to us here at our Vallejo Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. You actually were the first book that we read together as a book club, and that was your book, Greed. Following that discussion, many of us read your other books in the Seven Deadly Sins series, Envy and Lust. And we came together as a group when the Lifetime movies came on, and we discussed the differences between the book and the movies. So can you share with us about your upcoming production of Raft, which we understand is set to air in April?
Yes, it's Wrath and Greed will be airing in April.
Okay.
Yeah, Wrath will be April 16th and Greed will be April 23rd, the very next weekend. So it's both. So this time you're really going to see a lot of differences in between the movie and the book for very good reasons. They don't tell me how to write books, so I don't tell them what's going to work best on the screen. I leave it to them because you'll hear a lot of authors say it's my work and they better do it this way. No, I don't do that since I don't know how to make movies. And if I knew how to make movies, I'd be doing that. So they are different. I was able to spend 3 weeks up in Canada. Oh, sorry about that. I was able to spend 3 weeks up in Canada while they were filming Greed and Wrath. And so it was a lot of fun to interact with the actors who most of them read the book first, which I found fascinating. Because they said they wanted the deepness of the character. They don't get the depth of the character in the script. So that was interesting to me. So that was a pretty exciting time because last time with Lust and Envy, we were in the middle of COVID and we couldn't go outside to play. And so this time I got a chance to go outside. And so that was fun.
Great. Well, we're excited to hear that the book we've read, The Personal Librarian, has also been opted by Al Roker and his wife, Deborah Roberts, for a limited television series. Can you provide any updates on what we might expect or when we might expect that to air?
Yeah, so that'll be a while because it usually, even the Seven Deadly Sins, that was started in 2017. So it always takes, these wheels move slower than anything I've ever, it's like a Fred Flintstone car. It just moves so slowly. But it was so interesting because Deb Roberts was the one who interviewed us when the Personal Librarian was selected as a Good Morning America book club pick this past summer. She interviewed us and she loved the book more than I love the book. And I really like the book. I have never seen anybody who loved the book so much. And she then introduced it to her husband because she said he was a historical fiction buff. And so it was really good because he doesn't want just a movie, which is 2 hours, which will really cut down on what you can put in the movie. Because a book is 300 pages and a script can only be 90 pages because it's a page a minute. So when they're making a movie from a book, they have to cut out 200 pages. They have to just cut it out, which is why I think Lifetime did an amazing job with Lust and Envy. With Wrath and Greed, they've gone off, but they also made some really good decisions on why they went off. With what they're going to be able to do with the Personal Librarian is 6 hours. And wow. So that's going to be, that's going to be a full story. So we're really excited about that. We just signed all the papers. So I bet by the end of this year, they'll be closer to getting into pre-production and they probably won't start production until next year.
Well, we're excited to have that come out and we'll look forward to seeing that. Speaking of the Personal Librarian, what motivated you to co-write this book, which is a historical novel, and that's a departure from previous books that you've written?
Right? Isn't it different from Greed? Girl,
definitely.
you know, one of the very best reviews that I have ever received in my life was this past time with the Personal Librarian. And the reviewer said, the versatile Victoria Christopher Murray. because I guess his point was that I can write anything, and I tried to. But what made me write this book is that it didn't really come from me, or not me alone. My co-author is a historical fiction writer, and she writes about women who have been lost in history. And she found out about Belle de Costa Green many years ago. But when she discovered that Belle de Costa Green was Black, she did not believe that she, as a white author, even though she writes fiction, she did not believe that she could do the story justice alone. So she wanted to write this with a Black author. And she didn't know any Black authors. Publishing is just like the rest of the world, very segregated. And it took her a couple of years, and then she read my novel, Stand Your Ground. And when she read Stand Your Ground, she called her agent, and her agent got in touch with my agent. And all Marie did was send me a proposal. I didn't know anything about it. It was just a 3-page proposal. And all my agent said was read this proposal, nothing else. So the first thing I did was look up Marie. And I saw she wrote historical fiction. So that didn't fit. I write, contemporary fiction. And then I saw that she was white, and I called my agent and said, has she seen a picture of me? Like, did she reach out to the right Victoria Christopher Murray? And then I found out why she had reached out to me. She had seen a picture of me. She knew exactly who I was. And once I read the proposal, in the beginning, I wasn't interested because the first 2 pages were about J.P. Morgan. But when I got to the last page and it was about Belle de Costa Green, I really wanted to tackle this story. And the fact that it was historical fiction didn't bother me because I don't think I write to genres. I think a lot of my books are different genres. I write to the story that's in my heart at the moment. But I am stuck on historical fiction. I love this now.
Well, wonderful. We've so enjoyed it. At this point, my Wi-Fi went out a little, and I'd like to turn it over to our panel. And the first person up is Barbara Mitchell. Barbara, did you have a comment or a question for our author, Victoria?
Good afternoon, Victoria, and
Hi.
Soras all over our country. I really enjoyed your book. I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed it. And I didn't think I was going to because it was not you. It was so not you. And then as I got more into the book, I could almost say, oh, that's Victoria's part of the book. I could see that was your input into the book. I say all of that to say, my question is, was all of it fictional? All of the book? Was
That's
it?
Good
So
question.
J.P. Morgan was a real person.
Yeah, I can't give you a percentage of what was fictional and non-fictional, but it was more truth than fiction.
I thought that.
More truth than fiction. And this is what we did. We took the big moments of her life that were the truth, that she was hired by J.P. Morgan. That happened with her parents, though her parents were real people. We should know Richard T. Greener should be more on our lips as African Americans. He was as famous as Frederick Douglass during his time, but he got lost in history. And her mother, Genevieve Fleet, and that whole family, all of that was true. They have been free Blacks for generations. Going back to her grandmother's funeral was true. Everything was true. So I say that those were the dots. And then we connected the dots with fiction. And what I mean by that is we know the date that she went in for an interview with J.P. Morgan. And we know that she was hired by J.P. Morgan. But we don't know what they said to each other because, it wasn't recorded or anything, but we know who they are. We know who they were. We extrapolated who we knew. Like he was a man who was involved with a lot of different women. and he collected women like he collected art. When she walked in, she was this young, naive person who all she ever heard was her mother's voice in her head because they were passing. So we could make the conversation based on what we knew about them. We knew that when the father left the family, they were very poor, very poor. So they weren't leaving to get white privilege. They were leaving because she had had a bad experience in South Carolina, almost being lynched. And she did not want that for her children. So she didn't care being poor and white. She just didn't want her children to be lynched. So most of it was true. Like, okay, here's another example. Anne, the daughter Anne, was gay.
Yes.
And she was involved in a Boston marriage, which had me clutching my pearls. I had never heard of that before. And she did not like Belle. But we don't know why she didn't like Belle. We put in the part about she knew the secret, as that was the fiction.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to move it back to our MC, Valerie. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for giving it a chance. When you said the book wasn't me, it really is me.
Yes.
Just me written and, writing something different.
Yeah.
And I will say that Barbara started the book before me and she was saying, well, it's different. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get into this. So she really encouraged me to continue to read. Now, I know one person who very much has expressed that she loved the book, and that was our Sarah Anita Moore Hackney. Sarah Hackney, did you have a comment or a question for Victoria? You're on mute, Sarah Hackney.
There we are. Hello there, my soror.
Hi,
What a joy it is to see you and to listen to you, particularly in your response to that last question, because at the end of the book, both you and the author explain some of the differences in terms of what was valid and what was fiction and what was not. And I took time to read that in order to ascertain what was transpiring. Whereas Sora Mitchell just said that she initially didn't like the book because it wasn't you. On the other hand, I enjoyed the book immensely because it wasn't you. I really was intrigued that you were involved in the writing of that book and the organization of the book. What prompted you to divide it into periods of time, and the manner in which you did it? Did you intend for it to be easier to read? Because I found it easier to read. Now, the art language was challenging and sent me to the dictionary.
Yeah, and that's what we wanted to do.
Well, you certainly did it. And I'm an art enthusiast. So the travel with the various pieces of art just warmed my heart. And I think it was Basquiat was the only art, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Basquiat mentioned in the book toward the end?
Yes.
He was the only African American artist, and he was renowned, and his art would cost 5 times more than you would ever think was so expensive. The way, let me say this, had both of you traveled very much in all of those places prior to the writing?
No, that's interesting. Yes, I've traveled there, but I traveled to Italy, to London several times. That's my favorite city. I've been to France a couple of times, but I was never there thinking about writing the book. What we did with the research, one of the things that I loved about this writing this book, and why I will probably stay in this genre, is the research taught me so much as well. And you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And then what I mean by that is that as we read her biography,
Yes.
and so we had a foundation. But then as you're writing, you don't even know what you don't know until you don't know it. So when we were writing the first chapter, and I wrote that part when she was just walking across the campus of Princeton, I said, wait a minute, what did Princeton look like? I've been to Princeton, but I'm sure it didn't look the same as it had 100 years ago. So then I had to go back and look it up. When she was at the Vanderbilt ball, I was like, okay, because Marie and we wrote this book totally together. Every word in this book we wrote together. What we would do is if it was a scene that was mostly Belle and her thoughts and who she was as a person, I would write that scene first. And if it was about art and history, Marie would write that scene, and then we would switch and give our scenes to each other. And then we'd go in and fix it up and add in stuff. And then when it got to the editing part, we edited every sentence together. So we did everything together. But another example I was giving you of the Vanderbilt ball, I knew they were at a ball, but I didn't know what the Vanderbilt mansion looked like. So I had to go look that up. I knew that they would have wait staff there, but I didn't know what they would have on. So I had to go look that up. I knew that there was going to be music. That was one of the last things I added, but they didn't have boom boxes. So they really made it hard for me to kind of find out what was going to be the music. So the research just went in. And so part of the research was knowing the places. So I didn't have to go to Italy. I was shopping for purses the last time I went to Italy. I wasn't looking at the art. But in terms of the research, we were able to make you feel like we had been there. And then we did divide the book in periods because we were not interested, and we're never interested, because working on our next book now, in doing a story from birth to the grave. We're not interested in telling the whole life story of a person. Because we open up the book with Belle in her mid-20s, and then of course there's flashbacks into her childhood. And then we end with her just becoming the director of the Morgan Museum, and she still lived another 25 years. So we're never interested in doing a life story because it's not a biography. We pick the most important time in a person's life. So for example, the book we're working on now that's due in 3 weeks, so pray for me, seriously, like pray for me, is the friendship of Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune. And the period of time that we're doing, Mary is already like 55 years old, because she's a little bit older than Eleanor Roosevelt. Since it's their friendship, we want to start when they met. And Mary was already in her 50s. If you thought you knew everything about Mary McLeod Bethune, I didn't know. I thought I knew everything. I didn't know half of her story. So I hope I answered your question in there. We had not been to the place. That was why we did the periods, because we wanted to choose the most interesting times in her life. And then we had been at those places, but we weren't there to look at the art.
Well, I certainly enjoyed that book. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. Well, thank you for everybody giving me a chance, because it is different, but I'm a writer. I'm supposed to write different things.
Well, thank you so much. I'm now going to turn to Rhonda Roshan Smith, who had a number of questions, some of which came from people she invited to join us today.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for throwing in some of the history about Delta Sigma Theta, some of our dates and the suffrage. I was like, oh, yeah, I got very excited about that. So thank you for shouting us out, you know, for those of us that read and understood some of the things that you were saying. What character was the most challenging for you to write about? And then I have a two-part question. So that's one of them. And the second is, was there a particular period, chapter, or scene that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, great question. That's interesting because I think there are two characters that were challenging. Genevieve, her mother was challenging for me because I understood why she had had her children pass. But the story wasn't about her. The story was about Belle. But I wanted to kind of get her thoughts in there so that people would understand she didn't want to be white. She had been almost lynched in South Carolina. They had threatened to lynch her infant children. Who lynches toddlers? And that changed her life. And so once I understood that, I wanted it to come through that she was protecting her children. She was only protecting her children. So it was very important. It was challenging because I wanted to get that through. Then Bernard's story was also challenging for me because not only was everything that we wrote in there true, he was just like this bad dude. And they had the most dysfunctional relationship in the history of dysfunctional relationships. Sarah, Barbara, you asked before, I forgot the question, what was true and what was not true in the book. So most of it is truth and we connected it with the fiction. There's only one scene that we totally made up. And that was the scene at the end when Bernard didn't show up again. Remember, he didn't show up again in London? And so she got into a Rolls Royce. It had to be a Rolls Royce. And then she drove off with the exhaust in his face. We made that up because we were sick of Bernard. And we needed a boy bye moment. The truth of the matter is they were together until the day she died in 1950. She died before he did. They were the love of each other's lives. I don't get it, but she loved that man and he loved her. But we needed a boy bye moment, so we just made that up. And there is one favorite scene in this book for me is when they go back to her grandmother's funeral and the family is like, who are you? Because you don't know us. So it's funny, if you guys couldn't see me, I know y'all saw me in that scene because even Marie said she would have, you remember when one of the aunts said, go sit over there on that brown couch if it's not too black for you. Marie said she would have never known to write something like that. And I said, oh, really? Me and all my Black friends have an auntie who would have said something like that. So that was my favorite scene because I can imagine how families felt, even knowing why she did it. Once you start passing, you have to cut off everybody in your family. And I can imagine how they felt. And I wanted to write the true feelings, but the family coming together, even knowing they wouldn't see each other again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions.
I understand that Linda has had her hand raised for a while. Linda, did you have a comment or a question? Linda?
I'm here. Thank you. Hi, Soror. How are you?
Good. How are you, Sora Linda?
I'm doing well. You know, what I love so much about this book is the voice authenticity. And that's always important to me, no matter what the nationality, ethnicity, and race of the person. I needed to be authentic. And this was just so authentic. And it was just so obvious to me what parts you wrote because you're right. I'm from Cleveland. It doesn't matter where you're from. We all have family members who speak that way. Those who have been well educated as well as those who have not. And I wanted to ask you, when will be your next independent book? And do you have an idea of what you're going to write?
Good, great questions. So I still have to finish out the 7 Deadly Sins series for Lifetime.
Okay.
if I did not have to finish that out, I would stop. I'm in love with historical fiction, and I have never in my life fallen in love with the genre before. I just
Wow.
run with my heart, but I'm in love with historical fiction. So I am finishing up this second book with Marie right now, due April 1st. Then Pride is due May 1st. And then I will get to work on my own independent historical fiction novel. And what I'm going to be working on is, I don't have a good title for it yet, but it's something like That Day in Washington. And I don't know if anybody saw One Night in Miami. And
Yes,
it's
I did.
okay, so it's kind of based on that. It's Martin Luther King inviting women to the March on Washington.
Okay.
And so, of course, so it's their story. And then at the end of, I still haven't figured out how they're going to get together. But the women that has invited is, of course, Mahalia Jackson. And she has to be there because she changed the course of history when she changed his speech.
Yes.
The other woman, what's her name? I can never remember her name. And someone who was really one of the organizers. And she was fighting with Martin Luther King and all the men because they did not want women on the stage. And I think that's an important voice for us to
Yes,
hear.
it is.
They did not, these were Black men who did not want women. They were discriminating against us. So she's an important voice because she's very angry. And then Judy Garland, who was one of the top fundraisers for the march. And not only did she give money, but was fundraising. And two things was happening. She was deep into her addiction at that time. And she kept threatening CBS because they told her, you cannot go to that march. Those are communists.
Wow.
You cannot go to the march. And then I'm thinking about a fourth fictional character, maybe an 18-year-old person, like a fictional character who would have been me, who would have loved to have gone to that march and being in the middle of that. So telling the stories of all of those women and then bringing them together, because we don't know everything that went on behind the march in Washington.
I love it. I just love it.
Yeah, so that's going to be my first independent historical fiction, because, historical fiction is anything from the 80s back. I'm like, are you kidding me? That means I'm history? Are you kidding me?
Me too.
How did I get to be history? I'm historical fiction all by myself. So yeah, so that's my first one. I have so many ideas because there's so many of us who have been lost in history. And I just want a chance to tell these stories in a fictional format because more people will read fiction than nonfiction. And
That's
so
true.
we can tell these stories and most of it be the truth, but we put, with all the drama and the way we tell the stories, people are interested and they'll learn something. The next book after we finish the Eleanor and Mary McLeod Bethune book, Marie and I are going to write a book called The Two Wives of Frederick Douglass. And a lot of people don't know that Frederick Douglass was married to a Black woman and then a white woman.
Interesting. Very interesting.
He was.
Great. I didn't know that either. Let me now call on our Sarah Cheryl Ford. Did you have a question, Cheryl?
Yes. Hi, Sora. Great to see you again. I love to hear you talk and discuss your books, and very enlightening. I love historical fiction. So I was so excited when I started reading the book. And actually, I did the book through Audible, and
she was good. Robin
she was good. I loved it. I loved the voice. I loved it. It was excellent. It was so period on with the voice and the words. It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
One of the things that Ron kept ringing over in my mind was the comment that Belle had on the train going back to DC to the grandmother's funeral. How strange is the power of geography and law that we could have leave New York as white people, but arrive in Washington, DC as colored. And it was just like, I had to I actually played that over a couple times just to kind of like sink in what like that process of how that was for them, how
Yeah.
that felt for her, or how that might feel for someone, and how how they walked through the train, and now they're with the black. It was that I just love that scene, and
Yeah.
that
And youngest sister had no idea. She's like, I'm not used to walking in trash,
yeah,
you know, because she was the youngest sister who never connected with being Black. The other ones knew, which is an interesting fact. Here's an interesting fact. Out of all of the girls, she was the only one that had children.
oh,
Because even though the two older ones seemed to assimilate better than Belle did, they also knew, you don't know what's gonna pop out. You know what I mean? You know, we
exactly.
know.
Yeah, but I
And
just was like how that was written and how I could like actually visualize that. I thought that was awesome, and just the thought process that you came up with to write that.
well, we know that she did go back to DC for the funeral. So we don't know if they went back as Black or white. I would assume they would go back as Black because too many people there could identify them. Too many people that knew Genevieve Fleet.
Right.
And then they were going to be, if they pretended to be white and then they walked into a Black house, you just never knew. So
Right.
so that's why we said, okay, they would have to go back. Yeah, they would have to do some code switching.
That's the point.
But they had to do like some really serious code switching.
Yeah.
So that, because we didn't know, but that's what I mean. That's what I loved about this book. We had to think out and write out every scene. Not that I don't think in my other books, but every scene became a discussion with Marie. So what are we going to do? How are we going to show it? Would they do this or would they do that? Because in fact, when they first got to DC, the first time we wrote the scene with her family, we had them all welcoming and everything. And then we said, wait a minute, hold up. Not sure that would happen all the time.
Right.
And so let's do it the other. I did want some reconciliation, but not sure that it was going to be that way all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I look forward to more historical fiction coming from you. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
I am in love. I am in love.
Good.
Y'all can't get me. I got to finish the Lifetime deal because they took a chance on me buying books that I hadn't written. So I'm going to fulfill what I had promised them. But that'll be the last fake stuff y'all get out of me. There's so many. Now I go in, I look at these stories and I can't write them fast enough.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I did my master's dissertation on Alex Haley. And one of the things that stood out for me is when he was writing Roots, he talked about it being faction. So that's what I think about in your book.
Yeah.
And part fiction, and you bring it together and really bring people into the story. And that's what I love.
I think that's how you really do bring people into the story.
Exactly. So Sharon Moore, Sarah Moore, did you have a question for us?
Yes, I did. Thank you again so much, Sora Murray, for coming and talking to us. I too enjoyed the book so much. And before I ask my question, I wanted to just say, like Sora Ford, I listened to the Audible and your comment about Bernard. I'm so glad that you guys added that because I was so sick of Bernard. I was thinking, why are you letting him play you like this? And when I heard on the Audible version that you guys gave that some closure, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so it wasn't real, but at least we all good, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the question that I had, of course, all of the historical content that you had in there, and I know that took so much research. About how long did it take you guys to gather all of that information for the book?
Yeah, so it took us about a year to write it, just like the one that we're finishing up now. But as I said, you don't spend very much time. Like I would have thought before I started writing this, that somebody may spend 6 months researching and then writing.
Exactly.
But you really don't need to spend that much. You just need to get who these people are, their birth dates and everything, because it's not until you're writing that you know what you need for the book. You know, because it's the little things that make the book authentic. It's the what they're wearing. And the fact that they call dresses costumes. I'm so glad we switched over to dresses. I don't want to be wearing no costumes. and those little kinds of things. And then the details, like I was like, how in the world did they live in 1907? I mean, when she wanted to get together with her friends, you write a letter and then you wait for the letter to come back. You know how long the mail takes in today's times? Are you kidding me? And it seemed like mail was delivered faster almost then than it is now, which I find fascinating. And I couldn't stand no telephone, you know, I couldn't text. It was so hot. It's so challenging, so wonderfully challenging, which is something that I think anybody who's written 30 books needs to still be challenged.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. Again, it was a wonderful, wonderful book. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, let me call on LaShonda Wallace. LaShonda, are you there?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hi, LaShonda.
How you doing? And thank you so much for joining us again. I so enjoy these reviews. It's actually really nice to have the author when we do it, so that you can give us the real, right? And
well, I'll come back with you guys anytime y'all want me.
Thank you. And so I too am have switched over to Audible. And so, well, actually I do both, right? Because if it doesn't sound right, then you just go back to the book. So yes, you have very good narrators. My question is, in writing the book, did you want the reader to reflect on the isms that impact our lives today?
Ooh, so which isms are you talking about? I did want racism. I did want colorism. Colorism only in terms of Black people know Black people. Like white people don't know Black people.
Right. And a lot of people don't know the difference between color and racism.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. So racism was a big part of what I wanted people to be able to take away from this, and to understand how racism and white supremacy could drive someone to do what Genevieve did, which was walk away from her wonderful family that she thought was wonderful too. So I did want people to reflect on that. The colorism thing, I wasn't doing it in terms of between Black people, except to show, because one of the first things I told Marie when we started writing this book was that Belle was never worried about being outed by a white person. Not really. We did put that in the book with Anne. She was more concerned to Black people because especially 100 years ago, white people didn't know biracial and mixed race. Well, we had just come off the plantation. We knew, and they were denying what had happened. So they were like, no, that didn't happen. But we could just look at our sister. And I'm one shade and my sister's a different shade because my grandmother's very light and my grandfather's very dark. And so I did want to reflect on colorism in that way and how white people were fooled often, but Black people were not. So that's why whenever she saw a Black person in that book, Black people were like, I see you. I see you. And then do you have any other isms that you were thinking of?
No, I kind of was, because a lot of that resonates still today, right?
Yeah.
And so in one person that is listening or reading the book, especially in the colorism, which I think that we still really have great, I don't know what.
We still have challenges with it. We still
have great challenges with it. And so within ourselves, and even if I'm trying to be my authentic self, right? And I'm judged on both sides, right? Or you see me for where I am, but I'm you, right? So
Yeah. You know what's interesting about it though? I don't know what ism this is. It's partly colorism.
mhm.
One of the things I wanted to do in this book was to take down the level of anger in the Black community against people who passed.
Right.
I really wanted to reduce that because it had always been the thought, oh, you think you're better, you just want to be white. And so I have a really good friend who said she did not like Belle because Tammy saying her grandfather, Tammy was saying my grandfather couldn't pass. So what that got to do with Belle?
Right.
The only thing that I think Genevieve did was use the advantage that she had. And it's no different than what we do today. We are members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We better stop saying that we're not using our advantages. Our parents did things to make sure we went to certain schools. We went to certain colleges. This is what we've had in our life has not been open to every Black person.
Mhm.
And so just like passing wasn't open to every Black person, what we have experienced in our lives, Black people will look at us and say, you're elitist. I didn't have that. That's not fair. And so I wanted to bring the heat down on being angry at Black people who passed because they were only using their advantage the same way we use our advantages today.
Right. And I think that when you explain, we think quick and we explain. I mean, we react quick, but then once things are explained to us, I think that we do. So you do a good job with that. You know what I mean? To make people think, right? Because we're quick to react to what we
do is think. Because you're right. People's reaction is, I mean, my friend Tammy, she was just so upset because she said, my grandfather couldn't pass.
Mhm.
So it was almost like, so if he can't pass, then she shouldn't pass.
Right.
But there are people today who could say, I can't afford to go to that college. I can't afford to be a member of Delta Sigma Theta. So does that mean that we shouldn't be? Or we shouldn't go to that? You know, everybody should just use the advantages because we all need something in this country because we're not equal and we have to use whatever we have. And so I don't fault anybody who passes because the thought isn't that they wanted to be white to be better. Right. They wanted to be white so they wouldn't die.
Yeah. And then the only other ism I would talk about would be sexism.
Yeah, they weren't, Belle was that powerful and she didn't even have the right to vote.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
So along the same lines, I'm wondering what relevance do you see for today with lessons learned from this novel?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons is I did want to bring down the heat on people who passed to show, wait a minute now, you're sitting up in your nice house with your kids in private school and you're mad at Genevieve. Don't be mad at Genevieve because we're doing the same thing, just using our advantages. So that was one thing I had wanted to show. And then I had just wanted to show, you know, she lived as white. But when she put her head down on the pillow every night, she was Black.
Yes, I love that line.
She did. She was Black. And there were so many instances in their life when you could see that they were Black. Like the way she took care of her whole family. That's a Black family thing. That's not a white family thing. I remember years and years ago, my sister was about to move out to California, where my husband and I were living. And I was saying she was coming to stay with us until she found an apartment and a job. And a woman who worked for me said, so how long is she going to stay with you? And I'm like, I don't know. There's no. And she's like, if it was my sister, 2 weeks, she would get 2 weeks. And I'll never forget that because I was like, who does that? Like, who does that? But it's a different thing. As Black people, we take care of our family. We'll take care of the niece when she gets out of college and can't find someplace else, or the nephews we got to take, or our mother-in-law. We take care of each other. And so she was a Black woman And even the way she studied, JP Morgan never asked her to learn other languages, but she learned other languages, and that's such a Black thing. That is such a Black thing where we know we have to be 3 times better. So we go out and we learn more and we do more, because just to be considered equal, we better be better. And so there were so many parts of her life where she was Black. You could see it in that. And I wanted to bring all of that too. And then the issues of race, you know, and the fact why she had to pass. One of my other favorite, somebody asked me my favorite scene, it really is the funeral scene when they go back to her grandmother's. But my second favorite scene is when Belle comes in drunk and her mother says, okay, I need to sit you down. Your behind needs to sit here and I need to tell you the story. And I think one of the most important lines in the book is when her mother said, I had to join a group of people that I abhorred. I hate these people, but I had to join them to protect you. And you're not about to destroy everything I've done.
That's heavy, very heavy, yes.
Because they had threatened to lynch him, and so her and Richard left under the cover of night, leaving everything behind in South Carolina, because she was like, well, when they said they were going to come and lynch them, she was like, Richard, you get out. And they're like, no, they're coming for you and the babies too. And she was stunned.
Wow, that's heavy. Let me ask if there are any other people who have joined today that had comments for you. Tech, can you let us know? Are there any hands raised that we should call on?
At this moment, I do not see any raised hands. Let me go through just to make sure. No, there are no other raised hands.
D. Parker Doster has her hand raised.
Okay, can we call on Dee?
Thank you very much. I truly enjoyed the book. I read it from the front to the back rather than peeking in the back to see what would happen. I read it for information, for enjoyment, to learn something different, and almost like a student in a sense, because I have all these little papers sticking up in my book. And when I came to something that I needed to look up, I did. For example, I said to Valerie, when I came to the Atlanta massacre, I said, Atlanta massacre? So I actually stopped and I looked up and read information about the Atlanta massacre. So yes, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And I take an opportunity to learn something new every day. So thank you very much.
And the Atlanta massacres is a big one. That's something that one day I may want to write about. It shows up again in the next book that we're working on, because Walter White, who was the longest executive secretary of the NAACP, he looks totally white. Like it's more, there's no way we would guess that he was white. But the reason that he really became so focused at the NAACP and on lynching was because he was a teenager during the Atlanta massacres. And he watched white people, he was downtown, and he watched white people take men from in front of him and hang them from lampposts. And he said the only reason he escaped that day was because nobody ever thought that his blonde hair and blue eyes, was a Black man behind it. And so the Atlanta massacres was a really big one. We tend to know about Tulsa. We know about Rosewood. There are so many of those. And I'm really thinking about another book, The Insurrection in Wilmington, North Carolina, where after Reconstruction, there were still Black people in office. White people just came into town, took them out, killed them, and put themselves in office.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Thank you. Are there any more hands raised, Tech? Erica? Anybody else have a comment?
Not at this time. I don't see any other comments.
Okay.
Guests? Any hands raised?
No hands raised?
No hands raised.
I had a question, and I was thinking about the fact that Belle she was really facing this dilemma where she had to pass. And whereas today you don't hear as much about African Americans who are passing today, but there are still those who feel a need maybe to abandon their culture, which is what Belle had to do to fit into the corporate America. And I know you work for corporate America. So some of us will go and we'll have a certain persona at work, and then we come home and we see ourselves. Do you see that this book provides guidance in how to overcome such obstacles, or how do we deal with that cultural difference between corporate America and maybe being our true selves?
Yes, yeah, I don't even know how to do that, because one of my favorite poems in life is Paul Laurence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask. And I think I was like a little girl when I heard that poem. And what's so interesting is that I remember the first time hearing it and understanding it already. And I think because I grew up in a white community, and I understood that I wasn't being myself when I was around my white friends. And this is when I was 9 years old. So, but when I was around them, they all liked the Monkees and I liked the Temptations, but I had to pretend. I felt in order to fit in that I had to pretend to like the Monkees. I didn't like them at all. And then I couldn't listen to the Temptations until I was back in our house. So I haven't ever really learned how not to do that, because we have to assimilate, but I don't want to lose, the culture I have. So behind closed doors, we code switch right back. When we're with our girls, we're back with our girls. But when we're with other people, we speak a certain way and dress a certain way and talk a certain way. We can wear our hair naturally now, but that was only recently. I mean, the bill just passed. So I don't know. I don't think this book can provide any guidance, because this country is not equal. And so it would be disingenuous to say changes haven't been made. But if Belle's mother came back now, 100 years later, she would say, this is what I was talking about.
Exactly.
Y'all are still a mess.
that we are, but we're working on it. We continue to work on it. Are there any other comments? If not, our hour is about up, and I want to thank you.
Was that an hour?
Yes, it went quickly. Very quickly.
Wow.
Does anybody else have any questions for us and for Victoria at this point in time? So
Valerie, I see no other raised hands. There's something in the chat.
Did you want to share?
It's just something. This is from, thank you, Sora Murray. This conversation was such a treat and insightful. I purchased the book on Amazon during our time together here. I cannot wait to begin reading it. That is from Shakia Kelly Stockton.
Oh, good. I hope I didn't give away too much. I mean, she already knows. She's going to know about the Rolls Royce scene.
And
but she's going to be sitting there waiting for it.
Anita Moore Hackney, you can go ahead and unmute. I see that your hand is raised. Also, Hackney is unmuting. I'll read. There's another comment in the chat from Sora Linda Flournoy. My switching came from going to Spelman and then receiving an internship to a white advertising agency in New York City.
Yeah.
Joyce Hicks.
Thank you, Sora Christopher Murray, for this insightful book. It really makes one think. One thinks that in this day and age, with social media, with Ancestry.com, it would be a lot harder for someone to deny their roots. Much easier to research them. But to your point, white people see what they want to see. Mm-hmm. And as one goes through the book, reads the book, there are rumors, but she was so good at her craft. Belle was so good, JP didn't want to hear it. So turned a blind eye, put his hands over his ears. And when we talk about isms, there are a lot of isms: anti-Semitism, and homophobia, many things that were the book was just packed full. The question I have is my chapter, the San Francisco Alumni Chapter, and thank you of Vallejo Alumni Chapter for inviting us, is how can we get you to the San Francisco Alumni Chapter?
Oh, that's easy. I mean, I do anything for my sorors. I had 3 Delta events yesterday, 2 today.
And how do we contact you?
So Valerie can give you all the information.
Yes,
Thank
just
you.
contact me and I can pass it along. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Glad
so that's
to-
any chapters. I'll do anything for my sorors. You know why? You know why? It's not just sisterhood. It is sisterhood. But I always tell people I've been writing full-time for 20 years. That's like crazy. Nobody gets to write full-time for 20 years. You always got to do another job. You got to be a professor or something else. And I'm a Black person that's been able to do that. That's crazy. And that's because of God, because I know I'm walking in what I'm supposed to do. And it's because of my sorors and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Because if there's a book that I've written or a movie on TV, y'all are sitting there and you're in the first ones in the store. And that's how I've kept my career. It's because of my sorors. So it is sisterhood, but I could never do enough for my sorors, as they have worked me this weekend.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to seeing Raft. Enjoyed that book as well. So
and Greed, because you saw Greed. And I think out of all 4 movies, I think Greed is the best. Y'all didn't ask me who's in them. Don't you want to know who's in them?
yes, please share. Last time we gave you some people to consider putting in.
I know. Well, I don't have anything to do with it, right? They just let me come because I wrote the book and they don't want me to say anything, but I don't get to say a word. But who's in Wrath? And this is going to be very interesting with Wrath. Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child, and she's acted before. She actually was nominated for a Tony on Broadway. So Michelle Williams and her mother, they changed the mother's name. Her mother is played by Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mom.
Wow.
So I thought that was interesting because they probably have a mother-daughter relationship. And Tina's wanting to get into acting. If you read Wrath, you know that there's a Black man in there who I tried to do my best to still make him a good man with issues. But Lifetime has a policy of not putting a Black man on television with any kind of violence. I didn't know that. Who knew? So they changed. And I think it's good, right, Sarah Cheryl? That's a good thing. And so they changed Xavier to a white man. And then they created a Black character to come in and save her. And that's Romeo Miller. Little Romeo ain't Little Romeo no more. And I think he's one of the best actors in that movie.
Wow.
So that's Wrath. But out of all 4 movies, I think Greed is the best. It is so good. So in Greed, remember, she never slept with anybody. That was very important for me in the story.
Yeah.
Lifetime said to me, Victoria, we're Lifetime. They sleep with each other.
Wow, who knew? Who knew?
And I get it. So there's some changes there, which then changes the whole dynamic, but I get it. I don't have any problem with that kind of change because they can't put what I wrote on screen and have it be successful. So the main person in that movie is Monique Coleman. I was not aware of her. She had done quite a bit of work on Disney and other things. She is phenomenal.
Oh, wow.
And Miss Viv in Greed is played by Lisa Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And then the man that she gets involved with, which is very close to the last man in Greed, Godfrey, is played by Eric Benet.
Wow.
And he plays the heck out of that role.
Oh, that's exciting. And that's where we started with you, reading Greed. So
Yep. So
definitely
and I
wanna
think
see that.
I would really love to know what you ladies think about it, because I think Greed is the best out of all four. I think Greed and Wrath, the crew and everything was way better than Lust and Envy. But remember, that was in COVID.
Right, exactly.
And even though they still had a lot of COVID protocols, they were up there doing their thing. And it's just beautiful in Canada, just beautiful. But I think the actors, everything, they knocked it out the park.
Well, we will come together after we look at that and send you our comments. So
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to hear.
thank you so much again. And thank you for spending this time with us today. We appreciate you and we wish you continued
Valerie,
success.
I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but Anita Moore Hackney has had her hand up.
Okay.
Oh, that-
Hackney.
That's all right. Am I on? Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I simply wanted to say, Sora, you are an inspiration, and I look forward at age 95 reading all of your books.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. It means so much to even have me back, so that means a lot to me. So thank you so much. And thank you for sticking through me writing something different.
Oh, yes.
Well, we enjoyed it, definitely enjoyed it, and look forward to more history coming from you.
Yes, you're gonna hear more history from me. So that'll be good. And Sarah Joyce, I look forward to hearing from you for San Francisco.
And I will certainly get that information to you.
I will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today.
Yes.
We appreciate you. It's been very enlightening and we always just love hearing from our Sarah Christopher Murray. We just so enjoy you and we wish you continued success.
Thank you. And I'll come back to Vallejo. One day we're gonna get to do this in person.
I'd love to.
Oh, well, one day, but I'll come back to you guys anytime you want. So.
And had a Sarah from the Washington area who also joined us today. Sarah Linda, she's back there in Washington, D.C. and had invited some Sarahs and friends from that area as well. So we're going nationwide for you.
Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody taking time out on their Sunday to spend it with me.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we log off, can we take a quick photo?
Oh, yes.
Sora Smith,
Yes.
I did not receive the information.
Okay, I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Sora Spencer Brown, are you going to be able to?
Yes, but we need to remove the spotlight first. Hold on
Oh,
one
I thought I
second.
did, sorry.
Okay.